What a busy week we had in AI. I'm Rich Bowers here with The Jump, and today we're going to talk about OpenAI's developer event that you just had, and I thought I'd bring in some AI experts. First off, we have Jamison Ducey, who is an instructor for generative AI engineering over at Cognitia, and Christina Torres, who is also an instructor for artificial intelligence and was actually recently featured in one of our podcasts on Claude 2, Anthropic's tool. Good morning. How are you two doing today?
Great to be here, Rich, as always. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. Well, let's jump to it. Christina, as mentioned, OpenAI's event, they actually did a lot of different announcements, one of them being that they have 100 million people using ChatGPT. And they also talked about a ton of new features. Let's start off there with GPT-4 Turbo. Something you and I discussed previously in our conversation on Anthropic's Claude 2 was the amount of context limit. Where did OpenAI take their tool?
So OpenAI with the new GPT-4 Turbo model now has a context limit of about 128,000 tokens. So that number in of itself is massive. It's about 28,000 tokens bigger than Claude's. And with that, they also introduced a bunch of new functionality. So they have like an updated knowledge base from April 2023. Improved function calling. So now you're able to like call two different functionalities at the same time where you have to separate it into two separate statements beforehand. So what I mean by there is like if you wanted to say turn on the AC and lower the car window, you can now do that in one message to the GPT model.
Nice.
And it just does a better job of following instructions overall now. So a lot of really good updates along with that increased context window.
Following instructions is always good when working with this. Putting the 128,000 tokens into context, what is that? Are we talking like it could review a book length? Is that what we're discussing?
Yeah, so absolutely. It has about a 300-page context limit now, so you can send it 300 pages worth of information. It will instantly analyze that and do any type of analysis that you asked from it.
Awesome. And so I think that puts it in the lead with the LLMs. And with all these adjustments and increases, how's the affordability of running it? Has it increased? Has it decreased?
So that's the fun part with the new GPT-4 Turbo model. It's actually 3 times cheaper to send messages and 2 times cheaper to receive messages. So exact numbers for GPT-4 Turbo, that's 0.03 cents every 1,000 messages, and to receive messages it's going to be about 1 cent per 1,000 message. So very cheap compared to the old model. That's a fraction of the cost, which with the amount you would send the model, it builds up.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I'm sure that works great across the board. And one thing I want to be remiss that you just mentioned. So the new knowledge cutoff previously was September 2021, a big leap. April 2023. That's phenomenal. So, Christina, in layman's terms, that means
you're getting much more updated information and you can trust the model to give you accurate information that is between September 2023 and April 2023, unlike what it was able to do before.
Wonderful. I'm excited about that. That's going to be amazing. Let's jump over to Jamison. Another feature that was released was customizable GPTs. How would you explain what are customizable GPTs?
That's a great question, Rich. It's an interesting portion of the platform. It seems to be OpenAI's push towards more crowdsourced, view-based applications, I would say. Not necessarily applications, but models themselves. So what I've seen from it so far, I've been able to play around with it a little bit. They're basically expanding the platform out and giving you an interface to create and fine-tune a custom GPT model for a particular use case. So if you are, for example, using a API for dungeon management or dungeon mastering in Dungeons and Dragons, for example. This is something that I've been looking into with this. You can give it access to an API. You can pretty much give it all the knowledge that it needs, pretty much already has that, but you can customize it and fine tune it specifically to create particular portions of a dungeon or a map or an encounter that you want. In games, you can make it to create particular aesthetics and backgrounds, since it has access to DALL-E 3 and image generation as well. It has access to different actions, not just different APIs, but different actions as well, like functions, like what Christina was talking about, and most likely will be talking about as well. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with this, but it's limited mostly to the models themselves. So some of the plans that OpenAI has for this in particular is going to be basically giving this as easy of a process as possible to create these models, and then creating a store for people to take a look at these models, test them out, and if they like them, to use them over and over again. And so that's where the view-based portion of this is going to come into play. And it seems in the future, a little bit more long-term, at least a couple months, I would say, they're planning on rolling out a monetization process for this. So if you make a model that becomes really popular, in the future, if this works out for them, if this platform, part of the platform works out for them, then they are going to give you money for that, basically. So it's a really interesting part, and I'm excited to see where it goes, for sure.
Well, that would give us a ton of information. And this is one of the parts that I was most excited about too. I actually already shared this with a handful of folks. So basically what you're saying is that an individual, anybody, right, there's no code even really needed, can create their own GPT for certain tasks. And the one that you mentioned was board games. There's the one they're advertising on OpenAI's website is board game instructions, right? So let's say I'm playing Rummy Cube with my father-in-law. I can put in those instructions and it can spit out the really slick ones that are going to help me beat him next time, is what you're telling me?
Basically,
right?
Yeah, I would say if you'd like to win that way, for sure.
Yeah, it's it's just telling me the instructions. And then there's other creative writings, and they focused on tutoring. Did you see the math tutor one? How would something like that work? Just again, somebody who's not so technical. Is that somebody who's strong in mathematics? They can actually create this and then put it into a future store that OpenAI will have?
Yeah, so that's actually a really great application for it. For subject matter experts who are not super experienced with code, the interface for this setup is really, really easy. They actually basically have this sort of meta agent that chats with you a little bit about what you want from the GPT, and then it sets it all up for you. It suggests a name, it gives you an icon for it, and once you have it all set up, you can chat with it and you can configure it to do particular things as well. So the more that you chat with it, the more that it will understand and keep in mind particular techniques for teaching, for example, and tutoring, or especially when it comes to math as well. So the more examples that you give it, the more interactions that you give it, you're basically fine-tuning that particular model yourself to be efficient at that particular output.
Okay.
So tutoring is an excellent example, and I think a lot of people will be using those particular models when this store gets up and running.
And it's wonderful too that somebody's going to be able to make money off of this. Do you know, or was it announced at all? Maybe an unfair question. With this store, is it something that users would have to pay for, or is it include, I believe, in maybe just the plus or enterprise subscriptions?
So far, it's only included in the Plus and Enterprise, which is subscription based. People pay for that. So my assumption is that they are turning some of that money more towards this particular portion to bring in a larger following. This is their attempt to create a community around this particular aspect of tech, so that people can get more experience, so that we can make some more creative, insightful AI just from a crowd-based perspective. It's definitely it's a move that I've been waiting for from them for a while, because it's a hard market, especially with Gen AI right now. You kind of have to be excelling in one particular area, and OpenAI kind of led the start of the race. But at this point, these kinds of branchings out into different areas of the market is exactly what they need to be able to keep the grasp that they have currently.
And I'm excited exactly what you just said too. It gives them an area that has been proven in other sections, right? Game development or for Androids even more so. Jumping on over to Christina, there's something that is also being released called Assistance API that allows for agent-like experiences. Can you share examples of, or maybe even use cases for this feature?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the major use cases is going to be code interpretation. So, from this, I think we're going to see a lot better code generation from the models and more accurate uh, outputs from the model. So, it is now able to kind of spin up a temporary environment which is able to run code in and be used to develop code so that you can produce graphs, charts, process files, and a bunch of different data. And this is going to improve the overall output of code for ChatGPT and other GPT models once they do integrate it into ChatGPT, of course. The other feature they have is also a retrieval based model. This one is going to take in some information. So we may see this used in companies, and I believe there are some companies already starting to use it where you upload your proprietary information or your company specific information to the model, and it will specifically only reference that set of information in order to pull information, pull data from, and generate new specific outputs. So that is going to be integrated into the Assistant API, which is kind of like the dev version of the GPTs, custom GPTs that we'll see on the market soon. Um,
How cool is that, right? Sorry to interrupt, but I mean, so you have a lot of companies that are making their own GPTs, right? And using ChatGPT maybe as the foundation. Now using the enterprise edition, they'll upload all their data. By the way, that's a lot of data for OpenAI to have. But from a user's interaction, how easy, you just type it in and it pulls up exactly what you need for, the company that you're working at. Right? Is that something that, how would that be valuable just in a really basic term for anybody working at a company?
So it's valuable because one, they already thought of security. So they've already thought of how they're going to lock these proprietary based softwares or GPTs to those companies specifically. So it's not like that GPT that's been trained on your company data is going to be released to the public. It's going to be locked behind some type of security system. So that way only people in your company will be able to use it, making their lives a lot easier. We can automate routine
Yep.
tasks that don't necessarily require human input, and that is going to speed up the workday for people in that company.
That's awesome because it also allows for continuous conversations with something that I was pretty excited about. So you may get into a certain situation where maybe an assistant AI is talking to another assistant AI as well. Maybe, Jamison, I know this is something that you're also interested in, and somebody who worked over in this space mentioned that assistant APIs are a baby step to AI agents. What are your thoughts of that? And then can you do you know the difference between an AI agent versus maybe this assistant AI?
Yeah, so that is definitely what the direction that OpenAI is taking with this particular push, for sure, with the Assistant API in general. That is essentially working this particular API into applications that also have other agents working within the application and teaching those to communicate. That is definitely going to be a pretty central aspect of AI systems and multi-agent systems moving forward. A lot of this right now that we're seeing is more of a sort of not necessarily like speciation, but specification when it comes to different companies trying to find different niches within the market. And again, this is OpenAI reaching pretty hard into one portion, the dev market, and seeing how much that they can do within that area. And they're providing all the tools and the resources necessary to do so. And I think that it's only going to be a matter of time before we see some really, really high quality multi-agent systems happening where we don't actually even realize that there are multiple agents behind the scenes because there's still just one interface for the user. So it should be interesting to see how that evolves in terms of how the user interacts with these applications and then how in the back end and even in the mid end within the application, how all of those kinds of things are interacting and how that's set up. So definitely something that I am watching for sure.
Fascinating. I mean, that's going to be even the next level of game changing than we've seen. It seems like just every month is just the next level that we weren't even thinking about or expected to be here next year, right? Or 2 years or whatever it may be. So I know we're coming up on time. A few quick things also that I thought was pretty interesting with features was they have a copyright shield, meaning that OpenAI will pay legal fees if customers using generally available content are facing lawsuits. I thought that was pretty neat. Last thing on this, Gardner, November 6th, says that AI ambition and AI ready scenarios are top priorities for CIOs in the next 12 to 24 months. It's not going anywhere. It's going to get more involved in our day-to-day lives, work, and even outside of work, as we're seeing, and more updates. Jamison, Christina, we'll have you again on here for the next one of these. I appreciate both of you. For The Jump, I'm Rich Bowers. Take care, everybody.